Hi, everybody. I'm Steve Levy from ESPN, and we say hello and hope you're well wherever you are seeing this. I've had the honor of serving as the Master of Ceremonies for the U.S. Hockey Hall of Fame induction for the last 10 years, and I'm thrilled to have the chance to catch up with some members now, as you can see, that are on your screen from the U.S. Hockey Hall of Fame. Cammi Granato, let's start with Cammi. Legendary career, spanned 15 seasons with the U.S. women's national team. Captain Team USA to the first ever Olympic gold medal in women's ice hockey in 1998 and is the U.S. women's national team all-time scoring leader. I love seeing the reaction of people when I talk about them. It's like I'm reading the back of their hockey card. There's Keith Tkachuk, the incredible career, the power forward everyone knows, first American-born player to lead the NHL in goals in a season. I did not know that prior to today. And is one of just two American men to play in 4 Olympic Games, begging the question, who's the other one? Chris Chelios. And then there's 3-time Olympian Mike Richter, one of the greatest American goaltenders to ever put the pads on. He helped the New York Rangers win the 1994 Stanley Cup, ending a 54-year drought. And as Chris Berman would say, I know because I was there. And he backstopped the U.S. in the 1996 World Cup of Hockey title, where he earned MVP honors. Actually, Cammi and Mike went into the U.S. Hockey Hall of Fame just prior to my run. That was 2008. You guys were in the same class in Denver. And Big Walt, I had the privilege of being there for your night in 2011 in Chicago. So, listen, let's start with, let's start with what everybody's talking about, first of all. What's going on in the world? This is distressing, terrible, and unique in that we are all going through this as a population together. So I think people at home, fans would like to know, how are you coping? Cammi, we'll start with you. Give us a snapshot into your daily days these days.
You know what? We're just trying to keep the kids busy. We got a home right now, our 13-year-old and a 10-year-old. My older 2 stepsons are a lot older, but when they come over, we've been doing some tournaments, which have been a lot of fun. We did an all sports tournament the other day with everybody. We were shooting pucks, we were playing basketball, we were throwing baseballs, soccer balls. And Walt Ray was shooting like you were in that video that your boys posted. He could not hit the net.
Oh.
You're making fun of him pretty good there. I beat him actually at a couple events, and had some bragging rights. But no, we've been just trying to make as best as we can the situation that we're in. And I think the toughest part is probably homeschooling. My kids don't want to listen to me. And then my 10-year-old did say to us the other day, do we have to eat dinner together again? Because we don't get a lot of dinners together normally when our lives are so busy. So that's kind of the silver lining in it all, is we are spending a lot of time, but yeah, that's what we've been doing to keep us busy.
Cammi, is it true if you were not going to be a hockey god, you would have been a 7th grade math teacher? Is that true? No?
Yeah, I don't know where you're getting your information from, but yeah, I had to relearn grade 7 math, and
yeah,
my son's a lot better at it than I am.
I got a daughter who's in 4th grade, and we're on angles and stuff, and we are very close from dad checking out. I mean, we are maybe a grade away. So, Big Walt, what's it like? Are you homeschooling Matthew and Brady? What's going on there?
Yeah, fortunately, my kids are a lot older, and going through school once was good enough for me. I don't need to go through that again. And, but it's been nice having the kids home. Obviously, Matthew's 22, Brady's 20, and my daughter Taryn is 17. So under the circumstances, it's good to have them home. At first it was great and all hugs and kisses. Now, Steve, it's a little bit of time to get them back to work here, and been a couple dust ups with the older one, but other than that, everything's good. We're trying to stay busy, playing lots of sports, and playing pickleball outside, doing a lot of different things, getting out and about a little bit, and it's been good having them home. They're not doing much to help out, but I think they both left their wallets up in Ottawa and Calgary. But Mom, I know, is excited to have them here, and it's been so much fun, really. It has, and it's we don't get to see them very often, but we just hope things get back to normal here as soon as possible, and we're doing a lot of Zoom stuff together and different with media and stuff and keeping busy. But they actually did see that I taped an old hockey game of mine when I was in college, 1991 Hockey East Championship game versus Maine. And I'm going to tell you, I took some serious abuse, and I can't disagree with them. I was terrible. And they go, "You been drafted in the first round already? Did that guy get fired for drafting you? You can't skate." They go, "Look at these boots." So, it was funny watching. We had a bunch of laughs. We're trying to stay busy, but, it's good to have them home for sure.
Yep. Ricky, what about you? What have you guys been up to?
Same thing. I've got 19, 17, and 15-year-old boys, and it is amazing. Just like Cammi was saying, the meals together, and they're on a little bit of a different program than I am, sleep and weight schedule. But exactly right. I mean, on one hand, it's unbelievable to have them home. On the other hand, I could use a little help with the yard work. So, Chucker, if your boys are getting bored of you, send them over. It's the unknown is difficult. If someone said, look, you got 4 weeks or 5 weeks to shut it down and then everything goes back to normal, I think you can handle that. But for work, for socializing, for everything, there's a big unknown. So it's difficult. And one of the things that when you do have time, it's funny, I had some friends saying this is the time for, the playoffs. And that's what you really miss is the sports. I mean, I love the spring for the Kentucky Derby, for the playoffs, for all these things that are starting up like baseball, and you have this time on your hands. So we've been busy, watching a lot of reruns and whatnot. And funny you say that too, Chucker. You look back on those old things, and I remember the first couple of practices we had in that World Cup in '96. Seemed like it was blazingly fast, and then you watch, what we thought was fast compared to what your kids are playing right now in the NHL. And man, oh man, the game has evolved, and we keep getting slower, it seems, as we look back on those tapes.
Yeah, you're right, guys. This is obviously a glorious time of year. I think sports was actually underappreciated. Like, we're all in the sports community, so we get it. But you really sense people who are like not even sports fans miss it too, miss that. And especially now, this is Stanley Cup playoff time. You want to be Gary Bettman for 20 seconds, Ricky? What's your scenario? How do you see this maybe playing out? We could drop the puck and, do we do best of 5 instead of best of 7? They go 3 rounds instead of 4. What could still do it to make the Stanley Cup what it is still today?
Well, for just purely financial reasons, you want to play. And obviously getting people in the building is probably the last thing that's going to go. It was one of the first to leave us, and it'll be the last to come back. School's out and work's out and all that kind of stuff. But the pro sports, employ so many people that all the people at the rink and everything else, the big facilities that you have in the NHL, concessions and all that. So it's meaningful impact on the local community. So for that reason alone, you'd love to see it come back. But at the same time, that's people at risk. And so they've had some really interesting conversations. These guys are thinking NBA, same thing, Major League Baseball. They all have to start figuring out, how can we play with nobody in the seats, first of all? Can you just do it? And yeah, I'd love to watch that right now. I mean, a great game with great players is a great game with great players. You don't have to be there to appreciate it. So they have the luxury of being able to at least get some revenue from the TV. And if they can sequester these guys, play games in a certain area, I'd love to see it. I don't care when it is. If it happens in July, because that's the first time that we can do it safely, do it in July. And I know that they're even considering maybe going into the late summer, then having a little hiatus and then starting again. But, back to where we were, there's so much uncertainty that I don't know when we can do this, right? Is the season going to start on time next year? If you wipe this one dry, right, and start anew in September, is it even going to get on? So it's frustrating. I can't imagine being a player, Chucker, your boys, there's only so many years you have, right? The 3 of us are retired, and you just injuries, trades, sicknesses, whatever. I'm thinking of Ovechkin. Can you imagine this guy? I mean, all of a sudden it looks like he's going to get Gretzky's record, and like nothing can stop him. Then coronavirus happens. And so, look, everybody's in it, and there's horror stories about, people losing their lives and everything else, but just on that tiny opportunity, that tiny window you have to play the sport at a competitive level, in the NHL or internationally, Cam, I just can't stand the idea of these guys giving up, one more year or one spring where you don't have it. So I'm sure Gary's doing this, but anything he can to get it back, even compromise, right? Go to a best of 5. I don't care. Get it in if you can, obviously, but you have to. I'll stop talking, but I mean, I guess the real deal is you got to, accommodate all the reality of the science behind it, right? So when Fauci says go, you can go.
Cammi, how do you see this playing out? How are you hoping it plays out?
Yeah, it's a lot like Mike said. It's the unknown. I would love to see it played out in some capacity. I know the Stanley Cup is kind of devalued as far as the but to get to play it out, to get to play those last games out, there's got to be a modified version. I've heard a few thrown around it too, a lot like Mike said, starting in July or starting in August. But yeah, it's. I think from a revenue standpoint as well, it's really important that these guys could do that if it was in an empty arenas and they had the right plan in place to see it happen. But it's new for everybody, and it's just, yeah, right now you don't know what to think. You just hope that somehow there could. I hope there's a modified season of playoff played as well.
Yeah, in the old days you couldn't have the Stanley Cup in August; it'd be too hot in some places. Like in the old Checker Dome. Did you play in the Checker Dome, Walt, or not? You're not that old, right?
Well, I played in the old St. Louis Arena, so yeah. I mean,
That was it, man.
yeah, it smelled the stale beer, and they love their beer out here. I can tell you that.
But now you can make ice. Look, they're making ice, in the Vegas and Los Angeles, the outdoor games. So the ice is not a factor. You could play the Stanley Cup final in August, and that's rumored to be a possibility. What are your thoughts, Walt?
Well, yeah, it gets really hot out here, but obviously the way the game has grown and the arenas are all, I'm sure it's possible that it won't affect the ice, but obviously, knowing what my kids are going through, they're preparing to play. And obviously there's a lot that goes into it. I mean, it's a global sport. I mean, you got guys from all over who are back home, and a lot has to, happen in the next, obviously, few weeks, months, and to get the game back. But, I can't imagine what Gary Bettman and his staff are going through on a daily basis with phone calls and different things to try to help obviously generate the game back and generate some revenue, which is, a factor for both the players and the owners. So I do think it's possible. I think, there are some teams that were built this year in the last couple of years to win this year and put a lot into it. And you feel for the guys, like Ricky said, they, careers go by very quickly. My son's in his 4th year, and he feels like if you can get in, you have a good chance of winning. And that has shown, I think, with Les last year in St. Louis winning the Stanley Cup. And I think, it might, people want to see sports on TV, and I think it's possible. And we know what it's like to watch. We miss it, and we've grown up around this sport. And I think people who don't even watch hockey, see it on TV, it'll take a lot of things away, the negative things away that it's happened to a lot of families and a lot of people who suffered during this, unfortunate situation that we've been going through. So I think you can do it. I think you can, 16 or 24 teams. I like 16 teams, get in 3 out of 5 early, then try to manage 4 out of 7. If you got to play in an empty building, I mean, that's just the way it goes.
So if you thought that was a difficult question, here's an even harder question. You all have so many great accomplishments. I'd like one highlight, and it doesn't have to be the obvious one. Mike, I get it, Stanley Cup, Game 7, the save on Pavel Bure on the penalty shot, but is that that's the one that stands out to the public? You might have something else that you reflect more fondly of.
Well, I mean, I'll start. Anytime that you go into a championship season, I watched Cammi when they won in '98 and going up there, and just it's always that journey. And watching St. Louis, it just seemed like such an interesting team. There's always a story when you win, right? I mean, every year you have it, but it's kind of an exclamation point. And something has to go awfully right for you to actually win your last game, whether it's the Olympics, the World Cup, or Stanley Cup. And I've never been on a team that's had success that hasn't been a great group of guys. I mean, Chucker, how much fun was that '96 team? You and Garen doing, high dives into the whirlpool in Philadelphia. I mean, I swear, all we did was laugh. I can't remember anything other than laughing on that year, or that short season, a month or whatever we were together. And it's the same thing when we won the cup, right? There's just so many funny stories and setbacks and things you got to deal with, but it's the journey that makes it, and that's what you miss so much when you're out of the game. And it sort of dawns on me now too, like sitting in my rear end watching it and saying, man, I sure hope the NHL goes back. You forget, and I hear Chucky talk, like it's hard on those players. Like when we had that lockout, right? You don't know whether you're going back in a week, 2 days. Is someone just going to call and say, hey, we got the green light? And back then, some guys were in the Bahamas, some guys were working out every day. We're all over the map. And so it's Ledecky was just talking about that wonderful swimmer, and you're getting ready for the Olympics, and now they're saying, all right, we may not play him. Oh, it's a year later. You think about their whole training cycle, psychologically, physically, and all that. So, yeah, I think that journey's been interrupted for all the poor players in the league right now, and for the international, the World Cups and whatnot, for World Championships for the women. But you'll make new memories, and even if it's abbreviated, everybody's in the same boat.
Yeah. Cammi, you got one favorite memory? Again, it doesn't have to be winning gold. It could be something else.
There's so many great memories. I was thinking about, obviously winning a gold medal is the pinnacle. Especially for women in sport of hockey, we can't win a Stanley Cup. So that is the pinnacle, the apex. And that's something that, is obviously the one that I would think was a favorite in the moment. It was, but I think when I think about my team and I think about the chemistry that team had that year, I look at the build up to it. And we were just on a Zoom call with the 98 women the other day, and we were chit chatting. I remember the China trip. We went to China when China just came on the scene in the women's hockey world, which is completely crazy to think. And we went to Beijing and then Harbin, which is like bordering the Mongolia border. Like it's very North China. So we get to Harbin. We don't have our luggage. We lost our luggage we don't have our gear. So we have no luggage. So we can't skate. So we're having a coaches meeting, and there's so much soot because it was an industrial city that we're all coughing the whole time. And our coach is trying to talk, and he's like, "What is with you guys?" And we couldn't stop coughing because it was just so bad. But the stories that came out of that, where one of our teammates is running down the hall just so pissed off that she's got no hot water and she's in a towel with soap all over her hair. We had a puck break in the arena because once we finally did get our gear, the ice rink was so freaking cold that the puck broke when someone hit the crossbar. It was so cold that we actually couldn't skate. We had the wind in our face was just like freezing us. It was so funny. And then, I think we paid Angela Ruggiero $100 to eat the duck soup. So we ate the duck feet. It was pretty much the most memorable trip we've ever been on. And we actually made a t-shirt of it because there were so many things wrong, that happened that trip. And that to me is like an incredible memory.
Of course, right? Of course. And all hockey players have those kinds of stories. Keith, I should probably know this, but I don't. What was your furthest run in a postseason? How close did you come?
We lost to Ray Bork in the conference finals when I was in St. Louis. And, that was a tough one. It was all close games. And, both owners were married to the Walmart family. So they were both going after each other a little bit. But that was a heck of a run doing that. And, I think in general, playing a few Olympics and in this sport, which we're very lucky to play in at the level we did, did I ever think when I was 12 years old or trying to be a hockey player that I'd ever become best friends with a kid from Slovakia or a guy from, Finland or Sweden or Russia? So it's funny where the sport takes us, it's such a competitive sport, but, to be able to do that. And now my memories are all living through my kids and being a part of that and seeing them succeed. And, my daughter winning a, state championship in field hockey or stuff like that. But, very, very blessed to be able to play a sport and lucky to meet, guys that, on that 96 World Cup team. It's just so many great memories that, I'm very fortunate to be a part of that just because of a game of hockey, which was awesome.
I really think of the big four sports, hockey is the most of the global games in comparison. And it's sort of, everything comes together. It doesn't matter where you're from, your background, or any of those things, languages, you can either play or you can't play. So how about a thought on each other? Mike Richter, I ask you, I say Cammi Granato. Your first thought is bam.
Just professional. I think the first time I saw her on the ice is when her brother Tony and I were playing at Madison, Wisconsin, and she came in and smoked me between the legs, and then, okay, I'm going to try now, and then smokes me upstairs. I'm like, what the hell's going on? Tony's like, you better start trying, buddy, because she's going to eat you for lunch. And she was right. I mean, he was right. But I've never seen her, enter into a competition, practice, or game without being entirely prepared. And I think that whole team that was the first to represent the United States in the Olympics was so professional, and they had played, that was a big change because they had played with boys when they were younger. There was just less. They were breaking every kind of ceiling as they went. And she was so much like her brother, just the feistiness and the intensity and just the professionalism that came with it. So, I think you saw it in the All-Star game. It doesn't matter whether you're a man or woman or what it is, where you're from. You just respect talent and discipline. And she had that in spades. So, and great family altogether anyway. So that's sort of the cherry on top.
Cammi, is that how you remember it? Did you wear him out in Wisconsin that one day on the ice? Is that your story?
I think he's being too nice, but
no, as close as I came to retiring before I actually did.
It's funny though. I think the cool thing about it is when I look at these guys, like the hockey world is so small, and then the USA hockey world is even smaller. So I went to 3 Olympics. One I watched Mike when Tony, my brother, was up in '88, and then 2 Olympics with Walt, and Mike was there as well for 2 Olympics. So we went through these things together, and I was at the World Cup and watched them win when they won in Montreal. I was there cheering for them, and so hockey world, is small. These guys are kind of like the families that we grew up with through the hockey as we started our careers. And Mike, I got some really good stories about you at Wisconsin. Tony and him were roommates. He met his wife through Tony and Linda, my brother and his wife, and he told me a great story about a car that you own, Mike.
Give it to us. Give it to us. People, come on.
Do you want me to tell it, Mike, or do you remember it?
Yeah, I remember it. I had $500, or actually $450. I bought this little Toyota, brown Toyota hatchback, and it was 4 cylinders. I love this little car, but it had no, get up and go. And I actually tied a phone in the inside at traffic lights. I pretended to talk on a car phone, it was just tied in like Mr. Cool. And these guys would take the car and pull out the spark plugs. And so there'd be like 1 or 2 cylinders going. God, I'd turn the thing on and they'd do something like they'd move it into a snowbank. A couple guys could pick it up, and when I come out, the wheels were off the ground from practice. And I get in the car and I try to go, and the thing would barely move. And I'm like, what's going on? And then Tony would put the thing back together and then try it, and it would go. And so there was something happening with that car all the time. And when I finally left Wisconsin to go on the Olympic team, I'm kind of running around. I had to go to Philadelphia, back home and back. And this poor car had been beaten to crap. And I went to sell it. And the guy's like, McMahon, I'll give you $75 for scrap. And I'm like, this car's unbelievable. And the dude says, look, don't make me get down on my hands and knees, because I know that engine will run for another 25 years. But if you make me get down on the hands and knees, I'm going to see rust. And if I see rust, I'm not going to give you 75. I go, can you give me 80? I want $5 for a sandwich. The guy said, no, 70. I'm like, okay, I took it and ran. And he's right, it was all rusted out. The thing was beaten to crap. I don't know if that was a story you had, Cam, but I took a lot of abuse for that machine.
Yeah, Tony liked the fact that you kept thinking the car wasn't running properly.
Exactly.
You put so much thought into like buying this car, and then they kept taking it out. And every time they'd look under the hood, they put it back in, and then it would run fine. And then
drive me up the wall.
Yeah.
Every time Tony drove it, it was fine. Then I'd drive it, and he'd pull the spark plugs off again. And I was like, God, I can't get up a hill in this thing, So,
Cammi, give me a thought on Keith Tkachuk, the hockey player.
The hockey player, or the personalities. There's 2 different.
I'll take either one.
I have so much respect for Walt. He was just the consummate power forward. I mean, he was just so dominant as a player. I really loved watching him, and I got to see him at the peak of his game. And I mean, he had that edge to him. He had that fierce competitiveness to him, and he could put the puck away, at will. And so I do remember that. And then as a personality, he's just overflowing in personality. You can just look at him and think, you see it in his kids when they play, just that little edge. And the jokes, like I just remember in the Olympics when we all had team dinners together, him and Billy Guerin were the clowns of the team, joking around and making things really fun. So a lot of good memories of Walt, and Walt actually played with my husband Ray in St. Louis, and I actually remember the story of your boys when they were little, standing in your living room. They had the little locker room, and they were standing there doing the national anthem, pretending that they're pros. So I remember that story from then as well.
Yeah.
Who's this
cool.
guy you keep speaking of? Who is that? I'm not familiar with him.
Who's what?
Who's this Ray you keep speaking
Oh,
of?
yes.
I saw today he put on Twitter he scored one shorthanded goal in his career. Did he play 1,000 games or something? One shorthanded goal?
Yeah,
That's it?
yeah, exactly.
Guess he wasn't penalty.
It must have been a 5-on-3, and he served the penalty and came out and got a breakaway.
Hey, that's exact. I'm not even kidding. That's
Come on.
exactly it.
So good.
That's
Oh.
exactly it. He put
My
the
boys love serving penalties for that reason only.
That's funny. Keith, give me a thought on Mike Richter, the goaltender. I'm sure you didn't score a single goal off him.
Well, you know what? You don't appreciate a guy until you see him every day in practice and see the way he performs, and not just small games, but big stage games. And obviously off the ice and in the locker room, the way he carries himself, you can learn a lot of great things, little things that you never seen before. He was very mature. Obviously, he had to deal with me and Billy Guerin, who are quite the opposite, very immature. But his performance on the ice in 1996, I don't care who we had. We don't win that World Cup without Mike Richter in it. That game was so lopsided in Game 3. It was ridiculous. In that whole series, he was just phenomenal. And that game, just showed what a great player he is in high moments. And, to be able to carry that trophy, we should have carried Mike around, in Montreal. And plus, it would have been better to have actually fans in there, because everybody, boarded the building because they were, upset with the whole thing. But to see Mike, what he did, and you had to be there. And, it's to have and also have a trophy named after you for what he's been doing for the best college goalie. I mean, I don't care. That's when you know you made it. How cool is that to have a trophy named after you? But that's the type of guy he was. And obviously, it's the most important position in hockey is the goaltending, and there's a lot of pressure. And I can't imagine what parents go through when they're younger and as they move up the ladder. I mean, every game is magnified by the goalie, and what he did in 1996 was, he's the reason why I got a chance to win a World Cup.
Hey, Mike, let's talk about that for a second. Can you explain to the folks the difference in playing for a team, training camp, full season, playoff run, Stanley Cup, as opposed to the short burst with the best players in the world all on your team? So the Olympic, World Cup versus NHL, and how that is different.
Well, you said it earlier, hockey is such an international game. So you have these just phenomenal players, Fedorov and, all the Russians. And there's probably 5 teams that goes into all these international tournaments expecting they can win not just a medal, but the gold, right? Finns, Swedes, Russians, Canadians, Americans, legitimately. And, my last Olympics was 2002. And, if you don't come to play against Latvia, you're going to have a problem. It's a single game elimination, or, one game can mean so much in terms of your seeding that internationally there's just that much parity. And there's a lot of pride on the line. If you're talking to anybody from Europe, they have grown up thinking about the Olympics, and now everybody thinks about both, right? We think about the Olympics, we think about the Stanley Cup. So going into that 96, the Americans had, I think, shown an awful lot of success on individual level in the NHL. We had 1980, we had some great, I guess, international competitions, but kind of the theme that was in our locker room really was, it's not a miracle. We are a good team. We have great players. We can compete with anybody, whether it's the Swedes, the Finns, or the Russians. And that tournament was amazing. Obviously the last couple games against Canada was awesome, but our games against Russia and whatnot at MSG were phenomenal, as you'd expect, just with the talent on the ice. But I think, back to Chucky and Billy Guerin, everybody talks about how funny they are and everything else, but there's a very serious aspect of what they brought. They were young and the new kind of prototype, strong, tough forward that can score. And you get a couple 40 goal scorers in there that can also drop the gloves or hit and aggravate the other team. And it just changed the way we felt about ourselves in the locker room. These 2 young guys in particular that are going to give up nothing. I mean, we were watching, I don't remember when it was, with my son, and just the wars that were going on. Hey, Chucker, with you and Foote, or you and Eric Lindros and whatnot. I mean, that was physical hockey, and it was skilled hockey. And that, I think, gave us a little bit of swagger for all the jokes and all the fun and all the enjoyment that we had. when the puck was dropped, it was invaluable to have that kind of extra dimension. We're not just skilled. We can play good defense, but we can kick the crap at any team too, physically, just because of a couple guys that changed the whole complexion of our team. And that was a good war. I mean, there was everybody knows each other. It's not like, hey, what does Wayne Gretzky do? What does Eric Lindros bring? We know him. We play against him. And so it was just going to be, how much pounding can each team take? And it's a pretty physical series. And those two guys really changed the dimension of what we were. And so it was that any team that has success has to be able to win in a couple different ways. Maybe it's goaltending one game. Maybe it's a physical game the other, or maybe it's just pure skill. And we could defend, we could hit, and we could score. And that was the difference of that team. It had so much depth.
Hey, listen, we'll get you guys out of here on this. Let's have one little fun round of question. Keith, we'll talk. First of all, do you want to give the Walt thing for people who don't know? They're like, hey, what's his name? Is his name Walt? His name's Keith. It's Big Walt. I'm old enough to remember Walt Tkachuk. I get that. Do you want to just tell the folks at home where that came from?
Well, it's one of my good friends and former teammate, Eddie Olczyk, who was one of the greatest guys around, just the most positive guy. And when I first got to Winnipeg, I walked in and he introduced himself and basically said, your new nickname is Walt Tkachuk. I'm the former player from the Rangers. And I said, what was I going to say? I said, okay, thank you. And after that, everybody called me Walt. So, I got to thank Eddie Olczyk for that. He's a great guy.
Just want to make sure there's no confusion. People watching at home think we don't know his actual name. We get it. That's the nickname. All right. So Big Walt, we'll start with you here. Tell the folks at home something that is not publicly known about you. Now, I will accept something in your hockey career or something personal, something that will surprise people when they hear, wow, I did not know that about Keith Tkachuk.
Well, I mean, growing up in Boston, we didn't just play hockey, although we loved hockey. We played a lot of sports. And as I got older, I was leaning more towards playing baseball than hockey. And playing in high school, got fairly decent and, was playing well. But then that next year, my senior year, playing hockey, I broke my leg. And then I was already committed to BU. So I kind of said, you know what? Forget rehabbing to come back quickly to play baseball. I just decided to put all my chips in on hockey. So I love baseball. I love playing on those, teams growing up where we played in all-stars and stuff. But that was it for me for baseball. So that was my only thing people might not know.
What position?
First base, anchorman. That's it, first base.
Big bat, no glove, or you were good around
we had the big bat and the glove. We just had to work on the speed.
That's the first baseman, right?
Short steps.
Cammi, what do you got for us?
Yeah, I think I was thinking about another sport as well. There was no recruiting for women's hockey at all when I was playing. I was pretty lucky to get seen. I just happened to be on the East Coast and was seen in a game that I was invited to play in, and that's why I was recruited to Providence. But no other school recruited me at all. In fact, I made calls and no one really wanted to listen to what I had to say. So I was lucky there, but I was set to go to Wisconsin as a soccer player, had my roommate and everything, and then got into Providence in August late and decided, of course, I wanted to go play hockey. But, and secondly, I played I don't know if you guys remember the U.S. Olympic festivals. You guys have to remember those. I was in 2 Olympic festivals for team handball for women, and I have a gold and a silver medal from those.
Remember that?
I don't think I've ever talked about my team handball day.
Wow.
But
you didn't play, right? They just asked you to do it, correct?
They asked me to do it. They were looking for some athletes, and it was awesome. It was so much fun.
That's how I became a goalie.
There you go.
That's amazing. That shows what kind of athlete she is, though. Hey, you want to try out for an Olympic team on something you've never done?
Unbelievable. Good luck topping that, pal. What do you got for us?
Well, 2 things. I played football, and I was this size when I was young. So I was big in 6th grade, so I was a lineman, and then I went to linebacker, and then running back. By the end, I was a punter. Everybody kept getting bigger, and I stayed the same. But I loved the sport. It was so much fun to play, and I was decent. And I stopped my senior year going off to Northwood Prep to focus on hockey. But better than that, 1 year I pole vaulted because I always played football. I always played hockey. I loved them both. But in the spring, I tried lacrosse and I tried to pole vault it 1 year. and I was horrendous. I think my height was 8 feet 6 inches. And the coach begged me to retire, so it was a short-lived run as an athlete.
Yeah, I did not see pole vaulting coming there from you. That could be dangerous. That could be put you in a compromising position, can't it?
It was
I feel like it's a Will Ferrell movie or something right there. Pole vaulting.
I was so short and heavy, I couldn't even get the thing to move. It was dangerous for the judges, for everybody. I just couldn't wait to do the thing.
Mike, we need to see a photo of that or something.
Yeah, honestly, I
Short
find
shorts.
put it to that. It is, and you got to think about it. I mean, those guys just get the thing and they make it look so easy. You run as fast as you possibly can, jam that thing into the ground so you actually get the. I was always like, boom, and just the thing would crash. You do it on a rainy day. I wasn't good. I really wasn't good.
Well, it seemed like it all worked out for all of you. And look, I don't want to take up any more of your valuable time. We're all so busy these days. But thank you for the time to all of you and to your families and your friends, loved ones. Stay well, stay healthy. Great to see all of you. And thanks for all the fun and the stories and the laughs. We need them. Thanks, guys.